am I excited? It's been a very um, tough week as far as work for me. Uh, I was really excited when I did my last posting with uh, this reading and studying. I was very enthusiastic about continuing to do it through the week, but it just happened that work has been uncommonly just crazy busy. Usually about this time of the year, things are slowing down, but it just goes in just chalk it up one more thing to um, 2020. And I talked about this a little bit last night during Friday night with the flakes, but it was a crazy busy. And so every morning was getting up early so I could get to work early so I could get a jump start, and just I wasn't able to do it. And I wanted so much to get into it. So we're going to do that right now, play a little catch up, get into chapter 34, because we are starting to get into the further we get through Genesis and Exodus, family trees start to come into play, become very important. And we'll start it here. You'll start to see how, when you read through Genesis and you get through the flood, and then you go through this long narrative of the genealogies of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. You wonder, well, why are they talking? Well, we're gonna find out this morning partially why that's important to keep the family trees, because you got to understand, by the time Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob come in the scene, the human tree, the family tree of humanity, is not that big. It's only been 600 or 700 years since the flood. So how fast can the population increase then? And it's not just that the population is increasing. There's also already been wars that have decimated whole populations and cities. So family trees absolutely matter. People know who people are. They know that you're a son of Ham, a son of Japheth, a son of Shem. So it's exciting to see how all these family trees interact and come together. And we're going to start to see that. So without me babbling and rambling anymore, let's jump right in. We left off in chapter 33 at the very end. Jacob returning, we read about his reconciliation with Esau. What a bittersweet moment that was. And almost in a way, it's a shadow of what's going to come with. We know what's going to take place with Joseph and his brothers. And it's funny that the bitterest fights we experience here in this life often have to do with family. That's often family interactions that causes the bitterest of feelings. And it's not changed. Nothing's changed. Yeah, you say, and I think, so it seems like I was talking about this before, that technology changes, social structures change, but just the absolute bare nature, the nature of us as humans, of God's children, doesn't change. There was family squabbles in the beginning. I mean, you look at Cain and Abel, and nothing's changed. So, with that said, let's dive into 34. And I know I said this. So at the end of 33, Jacob bought land. He was now going to settle down in his own land, and he buys land. It says in verse 18 of chapter 33, verse 18, Jacob came to Shechem, a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. So Shechem must have been a region. It wasn't there might have been a Shechem city, but the general region was Shechem, because Shechem was a city within Shechem. And Jacob came to Shechem, a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. So Canaan being even bigger. So we're following a geography. We're saying, okay, you have the vast land of Canaan. Within that Canaan, there was a region of Shechem, and within that region of Shechem, there was a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram and pitched his tent before the city. And he bought a parcel of field where he had spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. So, important names. There's a reason why he's mentioning these names in the city and whatnot. So he honorably, he purchased a portion of land that was rightfully among the city of Shechem. He purchased the land from Shechem's father, Hamor, which the name of the city is named after, for his, for his dominion, it's rightfully his land. So apparently it was already inhabited, and therefore Jacob couldn't homestead it and just show up and say, "This is my land." No, it was already developed and claimed by Shechem. So rightfully so, Jacob pays him 100 pieces of silver for it. So, verse 20, and he erected there an altar and called it Elohi Israel. God is with us. Or no, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm having a blank thought. Look it up. El is God. Israel is Jacob. So, chapter 34. And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. Now, if we go back to chapter 30, I believe it was. Nope, chapter 29, towards the end of 29, we learned the children that Leah had. And the last that, we don't know that it was the last, but we know that it was one of her last children, was Leah. Because if we go back to chapter 30, in verse 21, after she's had her 6 sons, it says, and afterwards she bare a daughter and called her name Dinah. So we can deduce approximately how old Dinah would have to be. And we know that, again, that, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, Jacob spent 20 years, and of those 20 years, he spent only 13 of those years having children. We know that Joseph was the last of his children to be born. When Joseph was born and the time was up, the 14 years were up with Laban, he said, "Let me go." And so, but Laban talked him into being there 6 more years. So Joseph and Leah were probably close in age. They were probably about the same age or very close. So we know that when Joseph was sold into Egypt, we're going to read about this later, but Joseph would have been, it says that he was 17 when he was sold into Egypt. That means that Dinah would have been about the same age. Now, we don't know exactly how old because when Jacob comes into the land, we can assume that Dinah was about Jacob's age. We're thinking 6 or 7 years old when Jacob returns to the land of Canaan, sets up his house, his land. Dinah would have been 6 or 7 years old. Now, we don't know how many years transpired. All we know is that she was somewhere between 6 or 7 and 17, 18. It doesn't tell us exactly. And that's the thing about this, that not everything is in chronological order. It's character development. It follows different micro stories that interweave with each other chronologically. I would imagine that she was at least in her teens when this takes place. Dinah, I doubt she was a young girl. She was at least in her teens. She was at least in marriageable age. We don't know. But she was young. We do know that she was young. And this would also, keep in mind, this would also make, we'll get there. I'll explain it later. Let's keep in context. Chapter 34, verse 1. And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shecham, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and defiled her. A bunch of things here. So we already read about Shechem, who Shechem is. He's the son of Hamor. He's a Hivite. So who's a Hivite? Here's the family tree where it comes into play. Hivites were from the descendants of Ham. Ham's son was one of Ham's sons was Canaan, and Canaan's son was Hivite. So the Hivites were literally the descendants of Canaan or the descendants of Ham. Why is this important? Here's why. And this is gonna throw you for a loop a little bit, and you got to understand the context of ages. There's lots of charts online. You can see this. You can lay it out where it shows the different ages. And Jacob, see the descendants of Shem were Arphaxad, Salem, and Eber. That's Eber is where we get Hebrew from, the name Hebrews. Eber, for some reason, was very prominent in his age, or he did something that caused all of his descendants to be known as him. They weren't known as Shemites. They weren't known, and we know the Canaanites. Well, we don't hear of Hamites often. We also often hear of Canaanites, of Egyptian or Mizraim. But it wasn't until fourth generation after Shem that a name stuck, and they were known by Hebrews. And we got to understand that Abraham died before Shem and before Eber. Isaac died just after Shem. Shem was still alive. Eber was still alive when all these events with Jacob were taking place. So it could be safe to assume that, okay, if we know the ages and how old Shem and his descendants lived, we know that Shem lived 600 years. We know that Arphaxad lived 435 years. All the way up to Eber, they're living 400 plus years. Okay, and so it could be safely assumed that the other brothers of Shem, Ham and Japheth, also lived long, as well as Canaan, Ham's son, lived just as long. And being that Hivite was only 2 generations from Ham, that he was probably living 400 years. So at this time, Hivite very well could have still been alive, as well as Canaan, for which the land of Canaan is named. Canaan could very well, they're getting very old, but they could very well be still alive. And so that's why it's very important to think of context of family trees. So when they're saying he's a Hivite or he's a Hebrew, that's because these people are still alive. The Eber's still alive. Hivite's still alive. We don't know if Ham's dead. Ham might have been dead. But it's very possible that while all this Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is going on, that the sons of Shem, Ham, and Japheth and their grandsons and their great-grandsons are still alive and still influencing their area. So I find that very, very fascinating that, we say we don't get that anymore where we're named for a family. You have different locations in our country that have predominant names. You have names that are old as the Revolution, where you have um, Johnson, Jones, Smith, very old names, um, but they're not Smithites, they're not Jonesites, they're not Johnsonites. Today, we are not known by our family tree. So I think part of that was because these great, great, great grandfathers were still alive. They were still influencing. They were still having to do with their posterity. So that's just very interesting to think about. Remembering and looking outside of the context of our 100 plus or minus years that we live now, that these men were living 400, 500, 600 years. And how many generations you'd be able to see pass on from you if you lived that long. And it would have been very disconcerting, because after Eber came, what was his name? Wasn't affixed. I have a chart here. Peleg, and Peleg means half. And does that mean that the land? Some say that Peleg's name had to do with the separation of the earth, but it's interesting that when Peleg was born, their lives were cut in half. They went from 400 years to 200 years. I don't know. So just I know there's a little bit of rabbit trail thinking, but just keep in mind that the patriot, or the original fathers from the Noah's children, are still around at the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their children. So people aren't quite dying off from old age en masse yet. So, all right, where were we? Sorry. So verse 2, wow, we haven't gone very far. And when Shecham, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her, lay with her, and defiled her. Being that the Bible doesn't explicitly, it stays away from explicit words like sexual relations, like rape. It's never going to say rape in the Bible. They don't. They veer away from these. So it's understood that Dinah was taken, and he lay with her. So we know that they had sexual relations, and he defiled her, which can be assumed that he did it by force. It was not consenting. It's not definite, but that's generally understood. What happened is that he took her by force, and some would say rape, some would say coerced unwillingly, but nonetheless, it is widely understood that she did not consent. Verse 3, and his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel, and spake kindly unto the damsel. Verse 4, and Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, give me this damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. So a lot can be said. What was Dinah? Who was Dinah with? Was she by herself when she was going out and visiting the daughters of the land? It's no different than popular culture. You have your young children, teenage, early 20s. They want to get out and see the world. They want to go out and experience the world. And here she is. She's going out into the land of the Canaanites, the land of the Hivites, and exposing herself to their culture. And I'm sure when she left to go visit the daughters of the land, that she didn't have in mind to become the wife, or to be coerced like she did. I doubt that was in her mind. And when she was probably looking for some entertainment, some excitement, and wanting to learn and grow and experience, but without wisdom. And we see that today with our children and teenagers. They are so anxious to grow up and to become and do adult things, but they lack the wisdom of the adult, and they end up getting themselves in trouble. So once again, we don't change. Humanity doesn't change. It's been the same since the beginning. Our teenagers, our children that are reckless have always been reckless. It's just a fact. They've always been reckless. But we understand that. Okay, so when Jacob comes into the land of Shechem, he deals honorably with it. He doesn't come in and force himself upon the land. He doesn't come in and force himself and take the land from Shechem. He buys it honorably with money. He makes an agreeable arrangement with the people of the land, of the king and the prince of the land, to inhabit a portion of it. And now Hamor sees what Shechem has done to Jacob's daughter. And I would imagine, because Jacob dealt honorably with him, Hamor's doing everything he can to rectify the situation. He knows that his son screwed up. How many princes and children of wealthy individuals, where they grow up and they have everything they want, they cause problems for their parents? And so Hamor is doing damage control. He is going to Jacob and saying, look, what's done is done. How can we rectify this? How can my son honorably have your daughter, Dinah, as his wife? Because in all honesty, if you think about it, being that Hamor and Shechem was a prince, Hamor was a king of this land that Jacob was living in, they could have asserted their royalty, if you will, and said, I want Dinah, she's going to be mine, and there's nothing you can do about it. Hamor is trying to be probably someone of business, honorable business. He's being a peacekeeper, he doesn't want problems in his land. So verse 6, and Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. And the sons of Jacob came out of their field when they heard it. Now, a lot's going on. We don't know how the sons learned about what happened, but when Jacob first heard about it, he kept quiet. He didn't tell his sons, and he probably for a good reason, because his sons were all in their late teens, early 20s, and you know how teens and 20s can be. Rash, but we'll find out that that's exactly what they are. So he doesn't tell them. They're not acting in wisdom yet, and Jacob's acting in wisdom. And but somehow the word gets out. While his sons are out tending to the cattle in the field, they hear about what happened. Verse 7, and the sons of Jacob came out from the field, and when they heard it, and the men were grieved, they were very wroth. Here we go. They are mad, like a hornet's nest. They are, because he had wrought folly in Israel. Okay, here's the first time we hear about Israel as a people. This is the very, very beginnings of Israel. He had wrought folly in Israel in lying with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done. We know that there were already, that over and over, God commanded his chosen family line not to intermarry with the Canaanites. Don't marry the Canaanites. And so two things are here. I mean, one, she's involved with a Canaanite. Two, she has been taken without consent and has been through an adulteress or fornication. So everything is wrong about this, and they are angry. Verse 8, and Hamor communed with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter. I pray you, give him to wife, and make ye marriages with us, and give us your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. And we shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade ye therefore, and get ye possession therein. So Hamor is propositioning, saying, look, you know, we know that you're Hebrews. We know that you are a different people. You are a set-apart people. There are customs and traditions that were not the same. It's no different than a foreign family. Let's say a family from Bangladesh moves to America. They're going to be noticeably different in the way they act, the way they converse with each other, their customs. So Jacob absolutely is not like the people of Canaan. He is absolutely not like the customs of Shechem, the city. There's a distinctive difference between Jacob's family, Israel, and the rest of the land. So Hamor is saying, look, let us not be enemies. Let us not be separate people. Let's join together and become one people. We can live together in peace. Not understanding the charge and the necessity and the importance of Israel remaining a separated people or a set apart people. So he said, good, look, we'll give you our daughters, royal daughters, my daughters, the daughters of our land, and you give us your daughters, and we will mix and become one great people. Verse 10, and ye shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you, and dwell and trade you herein, and get ye possession therein. And Shechem said unto her father Jacob, and unto her brethren. Now the brethren, obviously the brothers have come back, and now it's all one big discussion. Let me find grace in your eyes, and what ye shall say unto me I will give. Ask me never so much dowry and gift, and I will give according as ye shall say unto me. But give me the damsel my wife to wife. So Hamor came, and he's willing to pay anything. He's willing, how often do we see, especially in movies, where the son of a rich man does some really stupid things and causes the man a lot of money, costs him a lot of money because of his decision. So Hamor's giving them an open check. He says, you name the price for your daughter Dinah to be my son's wife, and I'll give it. Doesn't matter. Name it. I'll give you anything. Was Hamor pleased about this? Did Hamor want to do this? I don't think so. I think he was, like you said, he was trying to rectify what his son did, and he's trying to pay people off, buy people off. And so, what the answer that that the children of Israel, the 12 sons, give to Hamor was probably a relief. I mean, think about this for a second. What would you be more willing to do? Pay $1 million to somebody or be circumcised? How much money is some physical pain worth? What is worth more? And we're going to see. Verse 13, and the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully and said, because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said unto them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. I'm sure, and coming from the Mormon church, I see, I get to see how the world views the Mormon church, because Mormons are very different. Jehovah's Witnesses are very different from the typical American, right? So there's different characteristics about Mormons that most people understand. Oh, Mormons don't drink alcohol. They don't smoke. They don't drink coffee. Well, one of the characteristics... Good morning, Josh. What's up, buddy? My son just woke up. I'll be done here in 11, okay? I'll come help you out. Okay, bud. So as well as people have heard that Mormons wear special underwear. Well, I think the situation would have been very, very similar, where the Canaanites hear that Hebrews are circumcised, that they're different in that the men circumcise themselves. And so the children of Israel, the sons of Jacob, used this to deceive Shechem and Hamor. And they said, verse 14, and they said unto them, we cannot do this thing to give our sisters to one of the uncircumcised, for that we are reproach unto you. This has nothing to do with the statutes, laws, and commandments that they're taught from Abraham down. They are using a covenant, an active covenant, to their deceitful benefit. They're saying, we cannot rightfully, in good judgment, give our sister to you if you're not circumcised. Verse 14, or 15. But in this will we consent unto you, if you will be as we be, that every male of your circumcised. Then we will give our daughters unto you, and we will take your daughters unto us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. See, we can see how they're deceitful, because dwelling with somebody outside of the family of Shem, outside of the family of Abraham, has nothing to do with circumcision. It has everything to do with family lines, family trees at this point. God did not want the descendants of Abraham to intermingle with the descendants of Canaan. But they're making this as an excuse. And one of the covenant that God gave to Abraham to be a father of nations was circumcision. It was an outward symbol that would distinguish them from any other man in the land. And so the men of Shechem, they probably know this out of rumors and talking about Hebrew men, that they circumcise themselves. And so they're thinking, oh, okay, this is what they mean by circumcising. This has to do with their beliefs that in order to be married, you have to be circumcised. So if we circumcise ourselves, then we can have their daughters and they'll have our daughters. And the sons of Jacob very well know that no, this is not what it's all about. They're just using ignorance to their benefit. Verse 15, but in this we will consent unto you, if you will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised. Then we will give our daughter unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then will we take our daughter, and we will be gone. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. And the young man deferred not to do the thing, because he had delighted in Jacob's daughter, and he was more honorable than all the house of his father. Wow, that's condemnation. See, so the children, the boys, or the sons of Israel, of Jacob, they say, look, you get circumcised and we'll consent to this. And it's saying that obviously it pleased Hamor, because that means he didn't have to fork out any of his wealth. It was just a simple, hey, get snipped and we'll call it good. Yeah, it's physical pain, but you got to understand, physical pain, I'm sure, was not as foreign to them as it is to us. They lived a hard life. They dealt with physical pain all the time. For anybody that works construction or works manual labor, they understand. And I worked construction for many years, that getting hurt was just part of the job. I don't mean getting hurt adversely where you become paralyzed or dismembered, but bumps, bruises, scrapes, cuts, infections happens quite often when you work in difficult jobs. And I think that was more common than it is now in our plush American lifestyle. Um, and the young man, speaking about, see, Hamor agrees, okay, I think that's a good, we will do this. And the young man deferred not to do the thing. So Shechem originally said, yeah, no, you kidding? You're not going to do that. And this has to do, I mean, this is in perfect line of a spoiled son. He gets anything he wants, and he doesn't have to do anything he doesn't want. And so he defers not to do the thing because he had delight in Jacob's daughter. And he was more honorable than all the house of his father. So obviously Shechem was more honorable, more just, trustworthy than anybody else in his father's house. And that's not saying much because Shechem obviously wasn't that honorable if he took some young girl by force. So it's saying that Hamor's house was not a very honorable house. I mean, this was a wicked city. This was not a godly city. Verse 20, and Hamor and Shechem his son came unto the gate of their city and communed with the men of their city, saying, These are peaceable with us. Therefore, let them dwell in the land and trade therein. For the land, behold, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us for wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only wherein will the men consent unto us for to dwell with us, to be one people, if every male among us to be circumcised as they are circumcised? Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours? Only let us consent unto them, and they will dwell with us. So in Hamor and Shechem's mind, they're enticing the people of their city, saying, look, if you just circumcise yourself, then you can marry their daughters and acquire their wealth, because obviously they're fairly wealthy. They got a lot going on. And so in a way, Shechem and Hamor are being deceitful too. They're saying, look, this is a time for plunder. You can acquire, rather than having to steal their daughters, or rather than having to go and steal their stuff by force, just get circumcised. You can marry their daughters, and guess what? Wealth. You're going to be able to acquire their wealth. This city is going to become more wealthy because we're going to become one people. Verse 24. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son hearkened all that went out of the gate of his city, and every male was circumcised at all that went out of the gate of the city. So I'm not sure what they meant by going out of the gate of the city, because it's talking about they went to the gates of the city and spoke to the people, and then all those who went out of the gate were circumcised. It must be a cultural thing, because we don't live in gates or cities with gates, and we don't interact like they did. It might be that every able-bodied male had to leave the city for his flocks and for his farming and whatnot. But then, like the Middle Ages, people would come back into the gates of the city for protection during the night. I don't know. So if you're an able-bodied man and you're capable of having flocks and a livelihood, you had to get circumcised. And the way they made sure this took place is by doing it to every man that went in and out of the gates. That's my conjecture. That's my thought. It'd be interesting to understand exactly why so much of things in the Bible have to do with the gates of the city. We know that Lot was sitting by the gates of the city when the angel showed up. So just one of those questions to make you go, to think, just to make you curious, that's the whole point of this study, is I want to cause you to become curious about the Bible. Because when you become curious, that's when you really start to absorb and soak it in and read and study and research. So, verse 25. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, that two of the sons of Jacob. Okay, we're gonna get through this. Just it's good to go through, and that's why I do during Sabbath morning. Read through it, and then we go back and piece by piece we study it. At least here in the Western, most of us males are circumcised at birth, and we don't remember it. It's traumatic. I've been around my sons when they've had it. They scream, they cry. But do I remember being circumcised? Maybe somewhere in the recesses of my subconscious, but no, I really don't. But I do know I was in Korea for a couple of years, and in Korea, all males between the ages of, I think it's 18, after they graduate high school, and 20, 22, have to serve 2 years in the military, the police. They have to do government service for 2 years, every male. And most males are not circumcised when they're born, but many of them choose to become circumcised in preparation to go into the military. And so I knew this young man when I was in Korea who was circumcised. He was 19 years old, getting ready to go into the military, and he was circumcised. And it was about a week of recovery. It was not. It was painful. And let's just be graphic about it. Think about taking a piece of your skin anywhere, just some loose piece of skin anywhere on your body, and cut it and see how that feels. I'm not talking about like a paper cut. I'm talking about cutting a big chunk of flesh off your body, let alone off of a man's very sensitive part of his body, and cut it off. It takes a while to heal, and it is painful. This friend of mine that was in Korea, he was in a lot of pain for it seemed like after about 3 or 4 days, that's when it started to feel a little bit better. But for that week, it was not. It hurt. That's all I can say. It hurt, the poor guy. And he talked to us about it and told us how it was one of the worst things in the world to do. Anyways, so it's understandable that the men on the third day in their pain, Again, we'll start on verse 25. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, very sore, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi. Okay, Simeon and Levi are full brothers. You know, there's 4 wives of Jacob, so a number of them are half brothers. But Simeon and Levi were the second and third son of Leah. They were Jacob's second and third sons. And Dinah was their full-blood sister. And Jacob and Simeon and Levi. Oh, sorry. Verse 25, it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, that 2 of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, Dinah's full-blood brothers, took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly and slew all the males. Now, we don't know how big this city was, but obviously there was a king, there was a prince. But it's yes, and all the men were in pain. How long? Well, it depends on how many people there were, but how long did it take for Simeon, for 2 of Jacob's sons? And these sons would have been early 20s, most likely early 20s, to go through the whole city and kill all the males. Even if these men, all the males in the city, were circumcised and were suffering from pain, for 2 men to go through the whole city and to kill all males, that's quite a feat. It's quite a feat. But we got to also understand there's a reason these men were called Hebrews. God was with. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob their posterity. God's promise was with the children of Israel, with the sons of Jacob. That doesn't mean that God approved of their actions. Because if you think about it, now, did Simeon and Levi, did they have the right to kill Shechem for what he did? Probably so. Shechem took their sister and defiled her. By all means, I'm sure in the customs of those times, they had every right to go and to kill Shechem, to take revenge on Shechem. That was the punishment for defiling someone else's sister, daughter, was murder. Well, not murder, but death. So, had Simeon and Levi gone and just killed Shechem, I think they would have been within their right. But to go in and to kill the whole city, to destroy the whole city, to wipe out all the males, was nothing more than murder, to wipe out the city. And it gets worse than that. It gets worse. Verse 26, and they slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went out. And the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister. All right, so if you're a Star Wars fan, there's a point where in the prequels where Anakin Skywalker goes to the Sandwalkers, the Sand People, and he wipes out their whole village out of anger, out of bitterness, out of rage. He doesn't spare any men, women, and children. Will Levi and Simeon do a similar thing? They don't spare any males. Can we assume that it included young boys and children? Maybe, because it said all males. It didn't say all men. It said all males. They killed all males in the city. One way to decimate a people is to kill all of the males, because once you kill all the males, women are assimilated into other families, other cultures. So they wiped out. It was genocide. Well, it wasn't quite genocide. It was genocide on males. All boys, men, young boys, killed them all. So once they did this, to add insult to injury, so Simeon and Levi, they kill all the males. The other brothers, the other 10 brothers, I would imagine Joseph was probably too young and was not, and could be restrained by his father at this time. But the other brothers went into the city after the males were killed and pillaged it. They took all the women, they took all the animals. Let's read. 27, the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister. They used this excuse, defiling their sister, to plunder and to steal and to rob and to take the riches of the city. They took their sheep, their oxen, and their asses, and that which was in the city, and that which was in the field, and all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives took they captive, and spoiled even all that was in the house. Verse 30, and Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, ye have troubled me to make me a stink among the inhabitants of this land, among the Canaanites, the Perizzites, and I being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house. And they said, should he deal with our sister as with an harlot? So, the only, this is my own conjecture, don't mind belief, the only reason why um, the people of the land didn't come rain down on Jacob's house at this time is because God, like I said before, notwithstanding what Jacob's sons do, because Jacob's sons are mischievous, they get in a lot of trouble. They'll get in more trouble, we're going to find out. But God promised Jacob, because of God's promise to Jacob, because of Jacob's righteousness, God spared his hand on his sons. That's my conjecture. It doesn't say that. That's my conjecture. Because Jacob says here, he says in verse 30, Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, ye have troubled me to make me stink among the inhabitants. So here Jacob comes, and he honorably purchases land from Shechem. Now we got to understand there's other cities in this land, because we learned that Shechem was within Shalem, and Shalem was within Canaan, the land of Canaan. So oftentimes these cities were the inhabitants of families. Okay, so you had different family trees branching into different cities, and so these other cities that are surrounding were most likely direct kin and family with the people of Shechem. So Jacob saying, I have come here, honorably I purchased this land, and then we wiped out and we pillaged Shechem. It's like it looks like we were deceptive from the beginning, that we had plotted this out from the beginning. You made me look like a scoundrel, because in all appearances, Jacob has gone into this land, has gotten their trust, and then he wipes them out, this city. And all the other cities around are going to hear about this. And now Jacob, they're going to bear down on Jacob, because Jacob's the patriarch. They know who the father of the family is. And he's saying, in your rashness, in the lack of wisdom, you have caused folly to come on our family. Now these cities are going to, which we might have been almost as numerous as Shechem, but now all these other surrounding cities, which are much, much more numerous than us, they're going to rain down misery on us. So once again, Jacob is in fear for his life. It seems like that throughout his life, Jacob's in fear for his life. He's in fear for his life when he leaves his mother and father to go to Laban. When he comes back from Laban, he's fearing for his life. And now he gets back in the land. He thinks, okay, finally I'm free. I'm no longer in fear of Esau. I'm no longer in fear of Laban. I don't have to fear anything. And now he is in fear of the whole land coming down on him. And he even calls out among the Canaanites. Now remember, Canaan might still be alive. Canaan very well might be still alive, or might be still having governance or influence on these cities. And the Perizzites, and I being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house. And their excuse, Simeon and Levi's excuse, was, and they said, should he deal with our sisters as with an harlot? That's all they have to say is, well, he shouldn't have done that. It's his own fault that we killed them because he defiled our sister. It's the whole city's fault that the spoiled son defiled our sister. We don't change. People don't change. We still do the same stupid things. We still make the same foolish reasoning. How often do we cause, you see somebody cause havoc in their family, and it's a pathetic excuse. Well, you know what? If they wouldn't have looked at me so sideways, or if they wouldn't have said that snide remark, then I wouldn't have, whatever, slashed their tires, or I wouldn't have punched them, or we don't change. We haven't changed. We consider ourselves, especially in America, spoiled. that we have somehow risen above our ancestors and we are more civilized. We are, we're no different. We deal with the same responses and flesh emotions and it's the same. And I think reading this and understanding this, you see that, you know what, in all the accomplishments of technology and advancements, that somehow we put ourselves advancing above the beginnings, the forefathers of this earth, and we're not any different. We are still the flawed, the fallible, asinine people there ever was. So we'll end there for now for this video. I mean, I'm almost to an hour and it's just been one chapter, but this is what happens when you start developing curiosity into what's written. I mean, you can spend hours. I can go back through the same chapter and spend more time. In fact, this is the bridge. I could sit here and spend hours just talking about the context and the background and what's going on in just one chapter in these. And that's how much I love this. We're going to let this go. It is read your Bible. Have a wonderful afternoon. And I'm going to come back and read chapter 35 because, there's so much more. There's so much more. And we'll get to 37. Anyways, have a wonderful afternoon. We will see you at 3 o'clock for worship and for a message. And have a wonderful Sabbath. God bless.